So good evening to everyone. Welcome to the final day of the Festival of Small Literature here in Buksa. I'm Matej. I work as a journalist in the Croatian Romani Union Kali Sara. Tonight we are having a conversation with Ms. Oksana Marafioti from the United States. I will firstly, before that, I have to thank you, as the previous moderators did, for this special event, because there are not maybe at all opportunities to talk about Romani literature in Croatia, so this is a unique opportunity for this. And not only that, the quality, the level of this event of anthology is very, very good, extremely good. So I'm proud as someone who works for the Romani community to be part of this. I will now read a short biography of Ms. Marafioti, so that you know at the beginning what she does. So Oksana Marafioti is an award-winning Romani memoirist, educator and lecturer. Her work has appeared in Time, Slate, the Los Angeles Times, and numerous anthologies. She has spoken at the Library of Congress, United Nations, and US embassies around the world. She has led creative writing workshops and cultural programs in the US and Europe, and is currently working on a new book. She is the author of the memoir American Gypsy, published in 2012, and the urban fantasy novel Donati's Lunatics, published in 2018. Ms. Marafioti, at the beginning I would like to ask you, since the majority, if not all, guests, writers on this festival are from Europe. So at the beginning I would like to ask you your perspective as a Romani writer from the United States. What is the situation with generally Romani community in the United States, and particularly with Romani literature in the United States?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be at this event. The state of Romani literature anywhere, I think, is in the beginnings of its journey in terms of mainstream visibility. It is definitely true for the American Romani writers. There are more and more of them emerging now, especially as they're connecting with the film industries, or looking for Romani representatives to work on screenplays or to do readings on somebody's screenplays that other people have written, to make sure that everything is, as it should be. So there's definitely more visibility, but I feel like majority of what we're doing right now in the United States is in the academia sector, which I guess often is where it all starts,
Yeah. Authors from Europe who participate at the festival said that when they want to publish something, some of their work, here in Europe they have big problems. For example, in Czech Republic, where the situation is probably, maybe regarding the development of the Romani community is among the best in Europe, but still they have a lot of problems if they want to publish their work. For example, there's only one publishing house that publishes exclusively Romani authors, and other publishers, let's say mainstream publishers, publish one or two books from Romani authors a year. So when you, for example, wanted to publish the manuscript of American Gypsy, did you have the same problems, maybe?
I got very lucky. I did not have any problems. In fact, the publishing house that published me, Macmillan, the agent from the house was looking at something else I had written that had nothing to do with Romani culture. And she saw my biography and she said, if you want to write a memoir, we'll publish it. So for me, it was the other way around, where I had this opportunity. And my first reaction was, I cannot write about my family. Everybody's going to know everything. Memoir is very difficult to write because it's your personal life that becomes part of the discourse. But a few months after she made that offer, I was talking to my parents, and they said, this might be a really great way to highlight the life that many people can get published to talk about. It's a great opportunity in different ways. So, the rest is history. So mine was a little different. However, American Gypsy was translated into Czech in 2016, I think, 2018. And I remember that translator that I worked with, she told me that the Czech publisher was having problems with the fact that I was Roma writer. and they kept asking if I could actually write, and my translator said, well, she's actually a writing teacher, so she probably can write at least a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was a struggle, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I would like to talk about a little bit about your biography. As you said, the novel, the memoir book, American Gypsy, is based on your life and the life of your family, let's say. The biographical fact that somehow changed your life is the fact that you, when you were 15 years old, came from Europe, from the USSR, to America. Yes, I would like to know how that event affected you, and where did the writing came from. So, how did you start to write?
I think, like many of us, I started writing when I was a child, very, very early. I was writing in my original languages first, by hand. I did not know that I wanted to be a writer. It was just something that naturally was coming to me, just telling stories. And when I came to America, I did not speak any English, so even the idea of writing was not something that crossed my mind. Often when you're here as an immigrant, you hope that you will get a good job and, you know, support your family. That's usually the dream. I wasn't really interested in writing. I did not think I could write professionally in English. So my life, you know, turned out in a very surprising way, because I was actually working in film for many years in my 20s in Hollywood, which I guess is adjacent to storytelling and writing. And then in my 30s, I decided to just start writing as a way of you know, just distressing and having fun, like many of us do when we write. And then I was writing fantasy, you know, those kinds of folklore. And that's when I met this agent who said, you can write something more serious, consider it. And so I feel like if it weren't for meeting that person, I probably would never feel like I could write professionally, you know, because often, depending on where we come from, we are taught a story about who we can and we cannot be. And if somebody doesn't come along and maybe change the way we think about ourselves, we could internalize that for the rest of our lives, you know.
And what was, just a short question, what was the reception of American Gypsy within your family maybe, or within the Romani community in the US?
The reception was quite good. My family, like I said, my parents encouraged me to write it, which is very different from a lot of people who write memoir, where their families stop talking to them. You know, they don't want the writer to share all the family secrets. My parents were both stage people. You know, I grew up listening to music, and they were performing on stage, so I feel like they kind of were familiar with that kind of life, and they encouraged it. You know, the reception by critics was really positive. I mean, I built my entire career on that single book. That was very, I feel like, just as important for me to write personally as it might have been to other people. I had people reach out and thank me, you know, from the Romani community, usually younger people, who reached out and said, you know, now I can see that we can write in the mainstream publishing, so I had this dream and now I'm going to pursue this dream, so it felt good.
Yes, as you can see, the reception of your book has crossed the ocean. We know for it here in maybe most of European countries where Roma are a greater part of, have a greater population within the countries. I would like now to refer to the text that is included in the anthology. There you discuss about the place of the literature. Namely, you will read this text, but I would just like to discuss the thing that you talk about, and that is difference between respect for, let's say, culture of the dead or the past, because they often say that some people take more care about, I don't know, monuments, history, the past, than they take care of the present. And where is the place of literature there? For example, someone might ask, the Romani community in Europe have greater problems than the art, than the literature, so how to somehow justify the need to write? Because If someone is a Roma and wants to write, someone might accuse him, hey, don't write, don't spend our money, don't lose time, come and help, go and help our comrades, our compatriots, to go help them, don't waste your time. How do you, where is the place of literature within the community generally, and within the Romani community?
Well, that's a great question. Can I ask you a question too?
Yes.
An answer? I mean, is there Romani literature? Are Romani people writing?
Yes, of
Are
course.
they playing songs?
Yes,
Are they eating movies? So it doesn't matter if somebody says don't do it.
Yeah.
We're creative people. In fact, humans are creative people. As a species, we're creative. This is what keeps us all together. If it's not for literature, if it's not for stories, for music, for the arts, we would not know how to empathize with each other. We would have no connections. Because just telling somebody that they need to do what they need to do without meaning, it's the same as working in a camp somewhere. And so it's very dangerous to have a society without arts. And luckily, at least in modern history, we've been able to resist it. By we, I mean everybody. Every time arts are censored, somebody comes out and still does it. So I don't think it's even possible to say, hey, don't do it because it's useless, because it's not, obviously, we keep doing it.
Yeah. When I, for example, mention, I agree completely with you. I think that art, to refer to that, I think that art gives new perspective, is somewhat critical towards the society, even though people sometimes say that it's a waste of time, it's boring, I don't know what else, but it gives some new perspective towards the present reality. So, for example, when I say Romani literature, there are also discussions about that. Is it necessary to say Romani literature, or is it enough to say if it's good literature that it is just literature? For example, Roma media, is it necessary to say it's Romani media, or is it enough to say we are journalists, not Romani journalists? So, what would you say is key elements of Romani literature? What are key elements, key perspectives?
I mean, I think the most obvious one is that the person themselves identifies as a Romani person. But I think beyond that, it's a personal choice of the creator. It's a hard question, because it's a yes and no. Depending on where you are, you'll say Romani writer, Romani artist. But in other settings, you might not need to say that. But I think what is important to remember is that until recently, recently, I mean a few decades, right? People didn't even realize that Romani people could write or produce any kind of quality, creative product. And so I feel like it is important for us to own that sometimes and to say, yes, this is Romani literature, because people, the world itself, is just now learning that there's such a thing. As sad as that is, it is true. I've met people literally who have said to my face that as a Roma woman, I cannot possibly be capable of producing good quality work, and so there's a lot of this old mentality that remains from many years ago, from a lot of stereotypical brainwashing. People believe that Romani people are all the same. Millions of are exactly the same person. I mean, that is biologically impossible, but it seems like people don't realize that when they talk about us that way. So I feel because of that, if we look through that lens, yes, sometimes it is important. When I go to conferences, and I speak at conferences and do lectures regularly, and if there aren't Romani people there, like there's not a presence like here, a connection, of course I will introduce myself as Romani writer. That is important to me, you know what I mean? Yeah. But, in other cases, if I'm around Roma writers, we're doing something, then we all know who we are.
Yeah. And somehow it comes out of your answers, but here in Europe, for example, particularly in Croatia, we have a problem that Romani literature is not included in some overviews, some introductions into world literature at all. For example, we have a big lexicon of world literature of 1,000 pages, and not a single author or single work is mentioned. What is your opinion? Does Romani literature deserves to be? I think that the answer is obvious. But does it deserve to be included among world literature anthologies, overviews, and so on?
I mean, it needs to. It's more than it deserves. It is. It exists. And the people who gatekeep these canons, which is very common, you know, historically speaking, there were other groups of people who were ostracized and left out of literature. And the reason for that is actually, if you include people in literary overviews in the canon of writing, that you're acknowledging then that they have an autonomy over their own experience. You know, and that's a hard thing for some people who are in power to accept, because that means that now you have to see a group of people as fully deserving of all the rights and all of the respects. It actually stems from the beginnings are in academia and literature, you know. So yes, not only deserving, but it absolutely needs to be part of those canons. And it's something that we constantly need to reinforce that understanding in people who don't think that Romani literature belongs.
If we compare literature with history, for example, textbooks for history and literature, the situation is pretty similar. Here in Croatia we have history textbooks, and Roma history is mentioned only in 1 or 2 sentences when the Second World War and the genocides are mentioned. Is maybe situation also better in the USA regarding the textbooks of history, but all the main events of Roma history recent in the 20th century were in Europe, but is it maybe in the US the situation better with Roma history generally and presence of Roma in the education, public and so on?
I don't think that Americans have the same shared history with Romani people, so it's a little different, yeah. Right? Because we have, you know, the Center for Romani Studies at Harvard, but led by Margaret Matachi, and there are other very well recognized scholars and academics who work within academia while openly, you know, in their biographies you can read that they're Roma, they've done work on Romani studies and culture. I think because this is such a multicultural place, it is more expected, and there aren't as many stigmas. You know, there's still some fascination and some romanticization and maybe exotization of Romani people here, because Americans know the Romani culture from a different lens than the Europeans in general. But it is not, I feel, like such an uphill battle here. I mean, I proposed the Romani cultural history class at my university. I proposed to teach it directly to the head of a department of our honors college, which is the university within a university where the most highly achieving students go. And he accepted it immediately. He thought it was fascinating. It would be a great way for students to learn how to research little known topics, how to engage with, you know, cultural diversity in an unfamiliar way to them. And I've been teaching it for 6-7 years, and I always have full classes. I don't know if there are any other American universities that offer these classes, but in general I think the situation is slightly different.
Okay. Now I would like to talk about a little bit the name of the festival and the Festival of Small Literature. To my mind came the book by French philosophers Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari. They wrote about minor literature and the work of Franz Kafka. They said that minor or small literature is necessarily somehow more political than the dominant or mainstream literature. Is it the same with, for example, Romani literature, that it is necessarily more political, openly political, explicitly, than the rest of the... Yeah.
I think it depends on the writer. I really do. Some writers, I mean, I've written essays and articles on various Romani related issues and topics, but I've also written stories where I have Roma characters who are just characters who happen to be Romani people. They're not, you know, their Romani identity does not drive the entire story forward. So it can be political. I think independent literature or small literature by nature probably is more political, and maybe one of the biggest reasons is because mainstream publishing, at least the way that it's set up in America, is about making money. So the stories that make it, you know, if you're a celebrity, then you get published. If you have a lot of, you know, social media following nowadays, can get you published. You can start on Instagram, suddenly you have 2 million followers, and the mainstream house, publishing house, will give you a publishing deal because you already have the readers. And so I feel like independent and minor literature publishing is absolutely indispensable for literature in general, for storytelling in general, because the focus is more on, stories that are more relevant to the social structure that you live in, to progressing ideas, not so much glam and, glitter and glamour of mainstream publishing.
Yes. And now we will slightly go towards your text included in the anthology. You will read it, but I would like you to comment. You say that you don't explicitly mention it, but I somehow concluded that nowadays there is no so much space for careful listening, that we live in a so fast and dynamic world where everything changes constantly. You have to do something new constantly, and that the interpersonal relationships have somehow degraded, so that we don't have any more this personal touch. You said it in this text that this careful listening, being with the other, not beside the other, was important for you as a writer. So, what do you think? Is the situation for the literature now worse than before with all this media technology, digitalization, and so on?
We can spend 2 hours talking just about this. Okay, so I will say this from a perspective of me being a book editor. I mostly work as a book editor now, and I edit a lot of books, 5, 6 books a month. And I do see some bad habits rising in writers, particularly using AI to write. It's quite problematic. I'll get an entire manuscript that's not written by a person. How do I know? Because I've actually trained in the beginnings of AI. I don't know if anybody knows this, but the AI companies reach out to people like me to train it, writers or professionals in their field. And I did it for a few months just to learn how it works from the inside, right? And that helped me actually recognize AI-generated text when other people are writing it. So that's disconcerting. That feels frightening in a way too, because the stories then are all the same. AI can only do so much. It can write a very clean sentence, but it can't feel. And so it doesn't make those connections between actions and emotions that a writer is going to make. So there are some problems. However, I don't know where this is going to go, because it seems like everything is kind of in flux right now. Hopefully this will be just another thing. I remember reading about Socrates during his time when people suddenly started writing poems on pages, and he completely had a panic. He said, the world is coming to an end, nobody's memorizing anything anymore. So hopefully this is another bump, and we'll come back to where we're supposed to be, which is writing real literature and reading real literature.
Yes, and this is especially interesting because Romani literature is pretty young. This written history is pretty young, 100, 150 years old, and the oral part was very important. So if you agree, I would like now you to read your text. I will put it on the screen so that others will read the translation in Croatian and they will know what you are. Even though most of them know the English, but they will know what you are reading. Okay. You can start if you are ready.
Alright, so The Radiant Body. Lena and I boarded our bus in Prague and arrived in Brno, where I was scheduled to read from my book at the Brno Museum of Romani Culture later that afternoon. Lena, as my book translator, would be reading in Czech. Before this visit, I had never heard of this town, but I liked it immediately. It reminded me of the early childhood years I spent in Riga, Latvia. Brno didn't look as glamorous as Prague, its functionalist buildings holding the same volatile history but with fewer adornments. Where Prague masterfully covered its dark past with its many tourist attractions, Brno's old dresses were showing a bit more. The city and I were strangers. And yet, as I merged with the foot traffic heading to the famed Zeldok or the Vegetable Square down winding streets, I felt more at home here than in many American cities I visited, where neither my American citizenship nor decades of residency could fully erase the immigrant in me. Usually when I visit a new place, I walk the streets mostly looking up and smiling like a silly person as I take in the sights, or so I'm told. But this time, for some reason, my eyes frequently drifted to the sidewalks changing terrain, in some places smooth way and others checkered with aged gray brick. I noticed something I hadn't seen before, a small square brass plaque pressed into the ground, then another and another. Finally, I paused in front of one, thinking these might be markers for important historical figures. "Lena, what is that?" I pointed at the ground. "We've passed a few already." She stopped abruptly. The passers-by parted around us, I'm sure not too happy with us, blocking the flow. "Oh, these are the Stolpensteine, or how do you say it, stumbling stones.
Yes.
They mark the Holocaust. See? You can read their names if you look closer. They're all over town. And some are even buildings themselves." Her voice revealed her familiarity with a sight that felt shocking to me. I inhaled, stomach heavy with devastation. In Europe, the Holocaust didn't end in the history books. It stretched its ugly fingers and gripped the descendants of all involved, and would for generations. I just didn't expect it here and now, on this day bathed in sunshine. "This is terrible," I said, not sure the words were enough. "But what do you say to tiny names inscribed on tiny brass squares at the center of a busy sidewalk?" Eventually we entered Zelnok, strewn with bright red umbrellas of the merchant stalls and humming with conversations and music. It would have been easy to distract myself with shopping, but I couldn't keep my mind off those stones. Lena told me about the thousands of Roma and Sinti citizens, many of whom were local business owners and not camp dwellers, who were rounded up and deported from Brno to various concentration camps at the start of World War II. And about the unassuming spot on the sidewalk in the Eastern District, where one could find the stumbling stone of Amelie and Jan Daniel, the first known Roma victims of the Holocaust, both of whom died in Auschwitz in 1943. In fact, most of the Brno Roma, fully assimilated and therefore easy to pick out, perished in the camps, and the few that survived eventually returned to their hometown. So much death in this history, I thought, in our collective history. About an hour later, Lena and I parted ways as she went to meet with a friend, and I set out in search of the Brno ossuary, said to be second in size only to the Paris catacombs. The air was fresh and cool, and the sounds of the city relieved some of the anxiety that crept into me after seeing the stumbling stones. The strangers going about their lives raised my spirits. We were all alive, still. For a brief moment, I felt a sense of calm and contentment as I strolled along the narrow streets, taking in the sights and sounds of this beautiful city. I studied the buildings around me, advertising KFC and Victoria's Secret merch, and the distant shape of Spielberg Castle, with its crimson spires soaring towards the sky. But I also imagined the area before cities, in the Neolithic age that gave birth to human life in the area, and wondered how much has humanity really changed since then. Eventually, the tourist center's vibrant energy gradually faded, and I followed the tram tracks all the way to my destination, a fascinating and eerie sight. The ossuary is an underground chapel located beneath the Church of St. James. It contains the bones of more than 50,000 people arranged in intricate designs. As I descended the staircase that led into the main chambers, I felt a sense of awe and reverence. The dim light cast dense shadows on the bones and skulls that lined the walls and ceiling, creating a haunting atmosphere. These remains spoke of both the fragility and the resilience of human life. As I walked through the softly lit corridors, a profound sense of connection to the past gave me goosebumps. Here were the bones of people who had loved and suffered, who had dreamed and hoped and feared, and now were a part of the rich and complex history of our shared human experience. Even in silence, they told stories. Several headstones stood popped up in front of the bone-covered walls. Most of the names were so faded they became a whisper of chisel and stone. Others survived the full erasure of names and dates. I marveled at the efforts some of the Brno residents took to store and preserve the remains when the caves were first found in 2001. But something bothered me. An annoying question that pecked inside my head when all I wanted to do was enjoy this unusual sight. Why do we preserve bones, but not lives? Why do we spend so much time and effort ensuring that the dead are comfortable, while so many living people continue to suffer? Death is inevitable. It's the most plagiarized ending to a book we keep wishing to end differently. It never does. It's not a mystery. It's the only thing we know for sure. But life, how we thrive despite the entropy that rules over us, is the most fascinating enigma of all. Why then is death sacred and life dispensable? Have we lost sight of what's truly important, not the preservation of bones, but the preservation of life? So focused on the physical trappings of death, the coffins and the monuments, we've forgotten the profound value of and beauty of life itself? The stumbling stones scattered on the sidewalks above prove that. In my ears, the dead whispered indiscernible stories. The ringing made me wince. So many lessons to convey, but how to do that without a living voice? Sadness and frustration stung my eyes, turning my head away from the handful of visitors meandering about. I pressed my fingers to my lids. The air, stale and tight, lumbered through my lungs. I squinted at the low arches above my head, taking in big, panicked gulps. The sudden realization that I might be having an anxiety attack didn't come until a mature woman with a cane and a rich French accent asked me if I needed help. Yes, I nodded. I need help to find the stairs and the light. She took me by the elbow, and together we gently ambled out of the ossuary's belly. As I emerged, disoriented by the intense sunlight and fresh air, a clarity of sorts struck me. Yes, the dead can have their cautionary tales, but it is the living storytellers who give our world meaning. A call to cherish and celebrate every moment that we are given lingered all the way to the Museum of Romani Culture. The range of my emotions cast a wide net. Between fear and inspiration, I also found that old companion of mine, still seeking an answer. What does it mean to belong?
So thank you very much. I would like to ask you now, you probably regularly come to Europe, or you maybe visited many times. What were your impressions about Europe, since you left Europe when you were 15, so quite young? Regarding Roma, primarily. Yeah.
I feel like I met so many wonderful people, first of all, within the Romani communities and outside. I did a speaker's tour throughout Czech Republic in 2018 that was sponsored by the US Embassy, and so I was meeting Americans, I was meeting English-speaking people, but I was also meeting Czech people from the area who would show me around, take me to different places. And I also had meetings with Romani kids who came out to talk about writing and just life in America. But it was also very, very sobering, because on one hand, I felt this connection with people. You know, I went to universities as well, and all of these rich conversations. But when I was by myself a couple of times, just walking through the city, looking for gifts for my kids, it was really the first time since I was very, very young that I noticed people, the shopkeepers following me. And I overheard somebody talking on the phone. I speak Russian, and she was speaking Russian, and she was saying, oh, there's this gypsy in the store, and I need to make sure she doesn't steal anything. And that was very, very shocking, because I hadn't experienced that in a very long time. And it kind of made me, I had a minor existential crisis while I was in Europe during that time, because again, on one hand, I was a recognized person, and maybe I had a big head, you know, about like the importance of what I do, and then on the street, suddenly I am reduced to stereotype. And so it was a wonderful experience, but it was very kind of like conflicting in some ways. But I feel like I had to have that experience in particular during that trip to inform the way that I write about Romani things and the way I teach about Romani culture as well.
And the last, before I give a word to the people from the audience, what are your perspectives regarding the future of the Romani literature? What do you think is the most important? What are the basics, the keystones for its development, for its primarily preservation and future development? What would you advise us here in Europe? As you probably know, even though a lot of money is invested either by countries or by the European Union, Council of Europe, and so into the development of Romani community, the situation is still not so good. For example, here in Croatia, the number of segregated classes in the schools are growing up year from year. So, if you have some advice, what would it be regarding the literature, culture, and the life of Romani community?
I know that it is very easy to give advice, but it's not so easy to do things about it sometimes, right? Depending on where you are. This is something that I do talk about extensively, though, because I'm a creative writer. I run a creative writing studio. I teach creative writing to people. I help people with writing books. I feel like storytelling needs to be somewhat of a priority amongst Romani people in terms of how we present it to our young. Because the answer for the future are the kids, not us, you know what I mean? Most people our age, their brains are already set in a certain way and it's very hard to change it. But I've noticed when I was on these several trips in Europe talking to Romani kids that they don't really even consider writing as a serious thing, right? But I feel like there's more benefits. I mean, I wish I had more time to explain how I teach. There's so many benefits to learning how to tell stories that go beyond just literature. You know, it teaches you how to be a critical thinker. It teaches you how to be creative and empathetic and how to be eloquent in your speech. There's all these benefits, and it's good for your brain. So I feel like if we can offer our kids creative writing classes, you know, workshops, you're going to have an emerging class of writers, not necessarily all becoming professional writers, but people who are comfortable telling their stories and understand the importance of telling stories from where they come from and who they are, right? To build our own canon, to make us more visible. Again, I know the problems, the situations in schools. That is absolutely devastating. I teach this here, you know, in my university class, and the students here are shocked when they hear about that, about the segregation. It doesn't compute. They don't understand how that's possible, right? So I know that that's a reality, but I also know that there are strong Romani community members who have a voice, and they can use that voice. You know, we need to guide our young a little bit more. We need to tell them that they have this power to be creative, and that it's not a useless pursuit at all. I mean, the entire world, the reason why we live in the society we live in is because of stories people told. I don't know if anybody's read a book called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, you know, the brief history of humankind. He talks about this premise, right, that everything that we know, our governments, the way that things are set up, started off as stories that people were telling their communities, and they became absorbed and became laws and ways of life. And so storytelling, I feel like, is one thing that's going to make a major, major difference in changing the reality of Romani people in the future.
Especially if we look at the history of the Romani literature, we know that 200 years ago and before, they were only the objects of writing. Others wrote about them, and mostly, if not exclusively, it was negative writing. So they were, I don't know, presented, I don't know, in many different negative ways. And after they took the point of subject of writing, things started to change somehow. They became more active and so on. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, in literature and writing, when you write characters, you usually stay away from writing stereotypical characters, generally, right? That's like when I teach creative writing, that's one of the major things that I teach. And so you write a person's story first. They're not a stereotype from the community that they're from. But you're right, for hundreds of years, Roma have been the subject, and usually a stereotypical subject within a book, right? Always written in a very stereotypical way. They don't change. You know, even if you look at characters like Caliban in Shakespeare's Tempest or Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights, the characters are static. They never change. They don't have a transformation, right? So one of the jobs that we have as Romani writers and educators is to teach people that a Roma person in a story is just a person like everybody else. They're an ordinary person having extraordinary experiences, because that's what literature does, right? And so the more we have, more representation we have, the more examples we have of characters in literature and film who represent a Roma who is not stereotypical, who has a diversity of experience. The faster, the sooner people, you know, we will teach the world the reality that we are, you know, because the way that people are seeing Romani people right now, they're not seeing a reality. They're seeing a very, very outdated, stereotypical lessons that they've been taught to think. And we need to change that.
Yes. Just one example before I give the microphone to the audience. Miguel de Cervantes, one of the greatest writers in history, starts his short story La Gitanilla with a sentence: "All Roma are born criminals," and that's it. And then he develops the story further. So yes. Okay. Thank you very much. It was very pleasant talking to you. I wish that you come next year or sometimes here in Croatia, meet our civil society organization and so on, and meet with other writers, and I think that it will be a nice time for all of us. So thank you once again very much, and if anyone has a question from the audience, maybe? Oksana? Yes, there is one. Come here, please. Here, I think that Mr. will present himself. Okay.
So, hrvatski, ti ćeš zapredaš na engleskom. Pozdravljam puno Oksanu i sa ovim tekstom kada je spomenula Stolperstein me dirnula me emocionalno, jer sam 1990. godine bio u krugu najužih ljudi, od 4-5 ljudi koji su odlučivali o tome kako da izgleda taj Stolperstein u Kelnu. Inače, naša organizacija Rom e.V. u Kelnu je započeo sa Stolpersteine, sa umetnik Gunta Demni. Pre toga smo imali i druge forme, ali sada smo ponosni na to da u čitavoj Evropi se to širi i evo ulazi u literaturu. A prvi Stolperstein smo postavili ispred gradske kuće u Kelnu i tu smo napisali jedan iz Erlasa, od Auschwitz-Erlas, određene zakonske odredbe. I dan danas stoji taj Stolperstein ispred gradske kuće u Kelnu. Znači, ko želi više o tome informacije, može da uđe na našu web stranicu i da se informiše o tome. I ja se zahvaljujem Oksani što je spomenula to i se vidi da put literature zaista ima jedan čarobni krug u životu. Ja zahvaljujem se.
So this was Mr. Roždija Ruso Sejlović. He's a writer from Germany, born in Montenegro. He's one of the guests here at the festival. He thanked you for mentioning Stolperstein or a stumbling stone in your work. He said that he was member of a small group in 1990s who were working on the idea, who were the creator of this idea of Stolperstein. And he said that the first Stolperstein that they put on the ground was in Keln, right? And on it were written the laws from Auschwitz, like rules that were anti-Semitic, anti-Gypsist, yes, laws. So he thanked you for mentioning Stolperstein, and he says that the ways and paths of literature don't know the limits. The literature just circulates around the world. Yes.
Absolutely, and I want to thank him back for doing that. It's like we were having a conversation all those years ago when I thought that. I didn't even know a writer was a person who, you know, started that. That was amazing.
Yes. As you know, many Roma writers are not just writers; they're at the same time activists, cultural workers, and so on. That is also somehow it tells a lot about and the situation and the history of Roma.
And you know, that's something we didn't talk about like too much, but it does feel like when I meet Roma writers, most of us do become activists because there are not many voices, you know, and through literature you have more access, so it's a great platform to use to progress, you know, improvements of all kinds.
It tells something about the universality of human nature. You know, we can be anything. We can be activists. I don't know what else. And somehow Roma, this person from Roma history, they show it that it is possible to be many things, not just one thing in your career.
That's wonderful.
Oh, there are more questions. Miss Delia.
I wish I was there in person.
I can turn the laptop so you can see who is here. Yeah.
Can you?
Yes,
Okay.
I can. Just a second. Come. I will just turn it so that Oksana sees who is here. This is now yours. This is audience. I will.
Oh, now I can see everybody. Hi. This is so much better.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, I am Romni from Romania. I'm Delia, and
I know you. I know about you.
yeah, from Magda maybe because she's
Yes,
a friend of
yes.
mine and we work together so much.
And you're also one of the Romani people in my class that I talk about, so it's an honor.
I'm honored. I'm so happy that I see you in person because this is online, but still it's like we see each other. And I would be so happy because I am in the University of Bucharest. We have these Roma students, so many each year, and we have this program of studies of Romani literature and culture. And I would be so honored to invite you online first, and then maybe face to face to speak to our students, and maybe in the future to open a course of creative writing, because I'm also teaching creative writing when I'm teaching literature and theory of literature, and I'm using also creative writing as a mean. So I would be so happy that you can come to discuss with our students everything that you like, and maybe some reading. And now we have in October 25th, it's a Saturday, we have a conference, and maybe you can join online to say a few words. It's a conference only of Roma, culture, literature, history, everything, rights. Is the second edition of the conference of our program of studies of Romani language and literature, and I would be so happy maybe you can join us for a few minutes, or if you can stay, it's the whole day. It's a Saturday, as I said, it's 25th of October. And I took this opportunity to say hello and to thank you very much. It was very impressive what you said and what you read. So I'm so happy. We are from the same generation, so let's fight together. And Magda, we will see with Magda in Oslo for the conference on slavery, memory of slavery. So I'm so happy that you mentioned her, yeah, as your colleague, friend, and sister, and as we are, all of us.
All of you are an amazing group of women. It is inspiring. That's how I do what I do, because I see people like you, and Magda, and others in the community.
We are together.
Yes, actively trying to make the future better. And I would love to join you online, and hopefully in the future, like I mentioned before, I'm supposed to go to a conference in Germany in March. Maybe, hopefully the world is still whole.
Yes, of course.
You know, because everything seems very unsteady. But maybe around that time we can...
Yes, of course. We keep in touch. I will take all your contact data from Malta, from the colleagues here, and congratulations for everything that you do there for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. I love you.
Okay, so thank you once again, and hope to see you in some other occasion. In Europe, hopefully physically, okay.
Yes, please, let's do something.
Yes.
I would love to. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.